Welcome back to another episode of the Casual GM Podcast. I am your host, Drew, and I am joined always by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Just as handsome as ever, Drew. How about yourself?
Get off the can already. I'm sorry. I'm great. So it's been a pretty stressful work week for me and my stuff, but luckily I get to slip into the bubble bath of the Detroit Lions. That's a terrible thing to say. I'm so sorry. It's just
good thing I've got aphantasia and I can't picture anything. So
it's relaxing for me to talk about the Lions most of the time. So I
that's
think
because we're not playing the games yet.
Yeah, no kidding. Those can be stressful, but
I went to the dentist last week, and they always do like the blood pressure stuff. They're like, "All right, put your arm out." I'm like, "Well, it's a good thing that it's just Home and Garden on TV up there, not the Lions game, because you're going to get a totally different reading on Sundays."
Yeah, for sure, man. I used to just when I was a kid and I was like in my early 20s, I just would live and die on Sundays, So
that was the way I was with the Red Wings during our heyday. I want the Lions to have a heyday. We're working on a heyday.
Yeah, I think they're building towards one for sure. So we got some news and notes from around the NFL we're going to talk about. So Jack Campbell signed his rookie deal with the Detroit Lions, which is good news. Ever since they went to this CBA and tied rookie salaries to the rookie wage scale, there is really no room to negotiate anything in the contracts. So it
is what it is.
Yeah, as far as overall compensation is concerned, that's kind of tied down. But things about when you get certain bonuses, that still can be negotiated a little bit. So some contracts could take a little time, but I don't think that it's there's much to do. So you would expect to see a lot of these rookies just basically be like, okay, where do I sign? Let's get this, because all the heavy lifting's been done by the CBA. Yeah. So he's under contract. That's good. There's no distraction there for getting him to camp. He's participating in OTAs. It sounds like everything's going really well. And but there is something that might be a cause for concern. The NFL is going to expand their probe into gambling activities amongst teams in the NFL. And now I haven't heard if this is for the Lions and the Commanders, who were caught up in the first go round. But I would be hard pressed to say that they're not going to take a look at the two teams that were caught the first time out. If I was an auditor and I knew that someone had messed up, I'd want to make sure that they had made changes so they didn't mess up again, right?
Yeah, and just because it was a recent thing doesn't mean that they're not still looking at different players on the same teams that were affected earlier. So it could be a line. Hopefully not, right? Right. But it could be a Lions player, it could be a Commanders player, or players, right? So
hopefully a lot of Vikings, Bears, and Packers, though.
I think it would be a little bit on the hilarious side if it was like Aaron Rodgers and all of that stuff happens and now we just can't even play for 6 months to a year. God, that would be a very Aaron Rodgers thing to do. Like, you know what? You guys are going to keep talking about me and I'm not even going to play.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Sounds like him. He wants people to talk about him for sure. I guess another news and notes thing for the NFL is that Aaron Rodgers' show, the Pat McAfee show, is moving to ESPN, I think, next season or this upcoming season. They signed him with some ridiculous contract because he's flamboyant and has a lot of takes or whatever.
Yeah, he's talk worthy.
Yeah, and so he's going to get tons of money from ESPN to do that for them.
We should do that. We should get tons of money from ESPN.
We should. I don't know that I don't want to be Pat McAfee. So I mean,
that's true.
I
just want his bank account. That's all.
Wasn't he a punter?
I believe so. Oh yeah, he was for the Colts, right? And he was the guy that would just lay people out when they got up to him. But back on the gambling thing, one of the things that I found super interesting was the way that the NFL is using technology to ensure that players, coaches, and staff aren't gambling.
Mm-hmm.
They partner with the different gaming sites. There's some regulations that the gaming, the casinos or the sports books all have to do, and they have to. There's a lot of like regulation behind that, and so they partner with them. They've got third-party auditors that work with them. They use the geo tracking in the different apps. So that way they know when I forget what they call them, but essentially a person who isn't supposed to be gambling is making bets within their app and geotagging, and are they in a facility? Are they on a team plane? Like all that. It's super interesting how they use technology to track this stuff down and try to keep all these players compliant with the gambling rules. So
I believe that is how Calvin Ridley got caught 2 years ago, is that the DraftKings or whatever site he placed the bet on informed the NFL.
Yes. And they're required to, if they know who it is that's placing the bet. And there's like a list of off limit, people. And if that person is placing a bet on certain things, they're required to tell. Really interesting. Anyway, if I can find the article, I'll throw it in the comments or something for anybody that wants to check it out.
Sounds great. The Lions proposed a rule that's been passed by the NFL. So it's effectively being called the Brock Purdy rule, where you can have a third quarterback dress for your games and not have it count against your roster. It doesn't take up a roster spot, I believe, is the way that the new
rule you have to be on the 53-man roster, but you don't have to count against the 46-man active roster on game day.
Excellent. So
they essentially get a free 47th player, but it can only be a quarterback. The quarterback can only come in if the first and second stringers are hurt. They can't be pulled out because of performance or coach's choice. They actually have to be hurt before they can actually be put in. And then if either the two quarterbacks that were pulled out of the game get medically cleared, they have to go back in, and the third string quarterback has to come out. So
interesting.
I had a little conversation with somebody on Facebook about, they're gonna game the system and put a non-quarterback in there. I'm like, why would you do that? Because there's always guys that maybe played quarterback in high school and they could take snaps. And I'm like, in the scenario in which you're screwed because your first and second quarterbacks went down, you're going to put like what, our RB4 or a wide receiver 6 or something in this 47th slot. And then if your two quarterbacks go down, the best thing for you is to play some other player that used to take snaps as quarterback and sneak in RB5. Asinine. Yeah. Just asinine.
Something weird. I mean, like during the pandemic and we had all the COVID protocols, I remember there was a week where Denver did not have someone that could play quarterback, and they started one of their like fifth string wide receiver because he played quarterback in college for a year or in high school, and they just got creamed. And like then the NFL changed that rule because of the pandemic. They were like, okay, now this doesn't happen anymore. And so the Lions saw what happened to the Niners in the NFC Championship game when they just got crushed.
Yeah.
And I think the Eagles would have won that game regardless, but like when you have someone just not capable of playing the position, manning the most important position on the field, like you get like 38-7. And like Deebo Samuel came out and said, like, we were down a guy the whole time,
Yeah.
And everyone raked him over the coals. And I was like, that is exactly what happened. Like he is.
You could have ran Wildcat. Well, you have to. Whether your offense is built around it or not, you're stuck doing it, right?
Okay, when the Dolphins broke the Wildcat out, like in 2011 or whatever it was, with like Cadillac Williams or whoever, and like the NFL had that figured out in 3 weeks. So I mean, like the Wildcat has just not been a successful anything, in the NFL outside the first couple weeks that it was utilized.
Well, I think the closest thing to Wildcat that we have now at this point is when you get the running capable quarterbacks like your Lamar Jacksons and your Justin Fields, where they take that snap and run. They're still a quarterback. It's not the Wildcat, but that's as close to a successful Wildcat strategy as you can get. I don't think you can just start hiking it to your running backs and wide receivers and call it a game plan.
Sure. Yeah. So, anyways, the Lions proposed a rule that I think is going to be a good one. I mean, the NFL does not want what happened in the NFC Championship game to happen ever, right? Like,
right.
You can take the worst NFL game on like a meaningless week, and it'll get better ratings than every other thing that you put on television.
Right.
So I mean, like, they want their product to be the best product that it possibly can be, and if this helps in like the 1 in 5,000 scenario where that happens, great.
Yeah.
I think we've made.
I mean, it's a great story when it works.
Sure.
Right. If the NHL has that where they've got an emergency goalie situation where somebody in the stands is played minor league or goalie or something like that. And that happened a couple years ago. I believe it was against Toronto. Their Zamboni driver, I believe. Are you still with me, Drew? I think it was in Toronto where their Zamboni driver actually had to come into the game for the opposite team because he was the emergency backup, ended up winning the game.
That's
huge
awesome.
Story. Beat his own team. The Zamboni driver beat his own team. Crazy. It's a great story when that kind of thing happens.
Promptly
it's super
fired
embarrassing
from his job. Yeah.
It's really embarrassing for the team that loses to the Zamboni driver, but like, it's a fun, interesting story, but even the NHL doesn't want that story, right? They because it makes their team look bad. Either the Zamboni driver beats the team, and that's not a good look, or B, you get blown out because you got a Zamboni driver as your goalie.
Yeah.
NFL is no different. Like they don't want. They would rather have not the story of some crazy, fifth string wide receiver who was also a quarterback in high school winning the game. They would rather not ever have that and have a good competitive game with a 47th player being a third string quarterback.
My favorite NFL season that could ever happen is the one where my team wins by 21 plus points every game.
Right.
Like I would sit there and watch every minute if my team was just utterly blowing the doors off of whomever it was. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I love
blowouts are fun.
I love blowouts. I would so much rather watch a blowout than like an anxiety riddled game winning drive attempt.
Yeah.
I just want to be like, yeah, all right, cruising that W, let's go. That's me. So but anyways, that's kind of our news and notes from around the NFL. A lot of Lions stuff, for a second week of OTAs. I think that's good. They're actively participating in the offseason of the NFL, not just their own stuff.
Did I see Gibbs has an ankle injury or a foot injury or something? Something really minor though, right?
It's certainly so. I saw something on Twitter where it's like it was like him jogging at practice, and it was like a bunch of like beat writers were just like kind of poking fun at it, like, ooh, like lightning fast, or like look at those quicks.
Right.
Or, stuff. And I got the feeling that it wasn't very serious, right? Like they're just poking fun at it. And this is the time to have like a, minor tweak to an ankle or whatever. But like, I'd rather have it now than September, So,
right.
So it's all good.
So let's talk the rest of the NFC North.
Sure.
Breaking down some opponents here. How do we want to start this thing?
Well, so we took a look at the schedules of the rest of the teams in the NFC North, our chief rivals, right? We're going to play them the most. And I thought we would talk a little bit about what their off seasons looked like, what we might expect if they're ascending or descending, and then we're going to go through their schedules too, like we did for the Lions last week. So why don't we break out the schedules and start talking about them? And we'll start with Minnesota, I believe, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
And so they were 13-4 last year. I've been logged out of PFF. That's no good. Let's log back in. So, they finished last season 13-4.
Yeah, I was gonna say while Drew's getting logged back into PFF, chat, feel free to toss your predictions, whether it's a particular game or season, outcome into the chat. I'll be kind of curious to see if you guys are kind of where we're at, or if you have some different ideas.
So the chat is having what I would describe as a heads will roll argument right now. Listen, if this team wins 8 games or more, no one's getting fired. Like, Dan Campbell's not getting fired. Brad Holmes is not getting fired.
So this is kind of where the start of the chat with the rolling happened.
Right. So
Dr. D said that he was expecting 8 to 9 games this season, and Don's like, "Hey, if we win 8 to 9 games, it's a total failure. Heads will roll."
So I wouldn't classify 8 to 9 wins as a total failure. I hope that I'm not misrepresenting Don's opinion here, but like what I took from that when he posted it was no progress has been shown, right? Like, and if you're not showing progress, what's happening? Like, if you're not standing still, you're falling behind, kind of a scenario. So like, we won 9 last year. Brad Holmes is safe. I think that Dan, I mean, like, you got to remember, like, this team, what has been bad for a long time, and like the incremental progress that this team has made from going to 3 wins to 9 wins, having 3 good off seasons, like the kind of like you're on Hard Knocks and you got all the press for that, and like the general the Detroit Lions are going to be on 4 or 5 primetime games when we had none last season. Like, I get the feeling that the arrow, as far as the NFL is concerned, is pointing up. And so like, I don't think it would need to be something like a significant step backwards, and it would need to be something that it's like, this is not based upon injury. Like, everybody's healthy and you're like 6 or 7 wins at the end of the season, where it's just like, you go, the Lions, like, he likes to go for it on 4th down. If those never work, or if they're in bad situations, or like the clock management is bad, or like there's some personality issue with the other coaching staff, or Sheila or something like that, and like communication breaks down, those would be the things that I would think would lead him to or the organization to say, is this the guy for us really, or do we need to transition? But like, based on everything that I have seen, like how he and Holmes communicate, like the being on the same page with Sheila, like the buy-in from the players, like the national attention, the fact that they improve 6 wins over the previous season last year, like, I don't think it's make progress or lose your job, but I don't
think it is for our coaching staff. I think Mark's got it right, where if we regress, and the reason is likely most NFL teams are, your record is only as good as what your quarterback can take you. And if we don't improve and it's because of Goff's play, I think the only head that will be rolling is Goff's. And I think essentially, if that's the case, next year is the beginning of the Hendon Hooker era, and we'll see kind of how that goes.
So now
I don't think Campbell or Holmes is going to be in trouble if we only have 8 or 9 wins. But I do think Goff might be. This is going to be the most important season of Goff's career, because I think if he gets us to the playoffs, wins a playoff game, he's going to be a hero. We're going to sign him to an extension, and he's going to be our guy for the next several years. If we don't make the playoffs, or if we go and then get blown out and lose, and if it's due to, in part, his play, I think this is his last year in Detroit, and we end up with Hooker starting next year.
If they make the playoffs, regardless of the win total, I don't know that anyone's getting fired. I don't know that any changes are getting made. Like, if you win 8 games and make the playoffs, I think that has to be considered progress, because you didn't make the playoffs last year, even though you didn't win as many games. And like, something has to go wrong, I think, in order for change to be affected at the kind of level that we're talking about, front office, head coach, quarterback. However, like I am a big now that Hendon Hooker's on the team, that's the kind of quarterback I want to see play. Like mobile quarterback, big arm. I want him to have a shot. I'm not willing to trade a bad season in order for him to get that shot.
Right.
But
you don't root for it.
Right. But I do want to see him have an opportunity to win the starting quarterback job. And if like I think that the kind of the way things work in the NFL is if the Lions have a season where it's like double-digit wins, make the playoffs, win the division, Goff plays well and he's not hurt the whole season, he's probably going to get extended. I would not be surprised. I would be disappointed, but I wouldn't be surprised about it. So there's that. But I think that there would need to be a pretty significant step back for some reason. And it's not going to be Jameson Williams getting suspended for 6 games. And it can't be easily explained away. It can't just be like, well, Jared Goff hurt his knee. You know, like no, that's right. An act of God, basically. Like you can't say, hey, Dan Campbell, you're getting fired because Jared Goff hurt his knee. I don't envision that happening. I think that people have used that excuse to fire head coaches in the past, but like I don't think that that is what would happen to Detroit. First time out, something bad happened to the team. So, but we'll see. And like if they do have 9 wins or 8-9 wins, something like that, like I would think that they wouldn't have quite met my expectations, but my expectations are not the Detroit Lions expectations. And like, it's not, I don't know that it's really that bad, to be honest. I mean, like this team has been bad for a long time. And just like reestablishing like a certain level of play where you're at least threatening to get into the playoffs every year. If you're a 500 ball club, you should be right around that mark.
Right.
And I think that it's probably a good thing if your team can win 8 or 9 games, you know, and if the ball bounces a certain way, you know, in this game or that game, you're probably a 10 or 11 win team. So we'll just have to see. I like the discussion in the chat. I think that that's good, but I think the Lions are more stable than that at this point with this group. If this was Patricia, he'd be gone. Right. So because he lost the locker room. I mean, and I think that Dan Campbell still has the locker room.
Yeah, I think a lot. In fact, I think he's drawing other players in because of him.
Right. The atmosphere that he's created is one people want to be a part of. Right. So that's important in all different kinds of work. So,
yep.
But let's talk about the rest of the NFC North, and let's start with Minnesota. So the strength of the team, as far as I am concerned, is Kirk Cousins throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson. I think Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL. Like I think he's amazing. Like, winning the
championship.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
We haven't gotten there yet. We haven't even gotten to week 1 Minnesota ASICs.
Winning the division, yes. So, so I think Minnesota.
Spoiler alert! God,
we did that last week, Mike. I think that Minnesota didn't get much worse. I think they're probably right around the same type of ball club they were last year, but I don't know that last year was a 13 win. I think 13 wins was an outlier. For them. So like I think that the way that the Minnesota Vikings are going to win or be a lot similar to the way the Detroit Lions are going to win. They're going to try and limit turnovers. They've got an elite player in Justin Jefferson. And, you know, as much as Kirk Cousins gets ragged on, like he's a competent NFL quarterback in the same way that Jared Goff is a competent NFL quarterback. And like, are they strong enough in other areas? I think that Kirk's better than Jared.
I think he's hands down better than Jared. Yeah. Like in a full tier up. But so when you say competent like Goff, I'm like, okay. Well, he's competent like Goff, but better, right?
Their styles are the same. They are short to intermediate passers who are not mobile, who win the game by managing the game because of their intelligence and the way that they are able to understand what's happening on the field.
The big difference between Cousins and Goff is Cousins is much more accurate downfield.
Okay, yeah. So he's got a reason to be. He's throwing to Justin Jefferson, right? So let's jump into their schedule.
It's a good thing that he is, right? Because otherwise there's going to be a lot more turnovers because that's who you're going to go to. All right, so week 1, they're at home against Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So I think, unfortunately, I think that Tampa is just a team on the decline. I don't know that Baker Mayfield saves them. He's certainly capable of playing elite football. You just don't ever know when it's going to be. He's too inconsistent. So, will he have time to gel with Tampa Bay
by week 1?
By week 1, I doubt it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Cousins does have Jefferson. It helps a lot.
Yeah, but Goff is not a better quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Get out of here.
So then they go on the road to Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia is a powerhouse. I think that's a loss. Then they're at home against the Chargers. Better QB, better weapons, better team up and down from what I've seen in there. I think that's a loss. Carolina is Carolina.
Even though they're at home, right? They're at home against the Chargers, but I just think that quarterback-wise and just overall team build, Chargers have the edge. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means.
That's why we're not.
It'll be a tight loss, right?
Goff does have a hotter girlfriend. His girlfriend is hot AF. So, I mean.
I think fiance now, right?
Yeah, congratulations, Jared. Lock that up. That was the best contract he's ever signed. So, then they're at Carolina. I think they'll win that just because I think they're a better overall football team than the Panthers are right now. Not once again, not a blowout, but I think it's 27-23, something like that.
Yep.
Loss at Kansas City because
speaking of blowouts,
I'm not going to pick anybody to beat Kansas City this year. They're not going to win every game, but I'm never going to pick against them.
Yeah.
At Chicago, that's a win. Home at San Francisco, I think that's a loss. At Green Bay and Atlanta, we have that as wins for them.
New Orleans was one you and I got stuck on.
Well, because I don't think very well of New Orleans. I don't like. They've bled players the last couple of years, have done a poor job of replacing them, have made horrific trades that gutted their drafts of effective draft capital. And then they signed another player that I would put in the Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff pool of quarterbacks in Derek Carr.
Yep.
So New Orleans comes into Minnesota on the road and beats them. Sure. Maybe it's a kickoff return for a touchdown or a weird ass fumble or something like that. But I don't think much of New Orleans, but I guess I like them a little bit more than Minnesota.
Yeah, and that was one of those where we kind of get to the bottom and we added up all the wins and losses and we're like 9-8. Well, if they go 10-7, this is probably one of those. That's probably the thing that flips. This is probably the win that puts them at 10-7.
Right. Denver, until I see Denver be good, I just don't believe that this iteration of the team is good. So they're going to win that one. They're going to beat Chicago. You'll have their bye, and then they're going to lose to both the Raiders and the Bengals because A, it's in Las Vegas, and B, it's the Bengals.
Yep.
I have them as beating Detroit in week 16.
That was where you and I differed, I
think so. And then they also beat Green Bay at home, and then they lose to Detroit on the road to finish the season.
Yeah, so
oh my God.
This was our Lions thing last week, and I didn't have it pretty where I've got the opponents. But week 16, actually both of us had us losing.
Yeah, it's Dallas that we disagreed about.
Yeah. Good memory.
Yeah. Weird that we wouldn't agree. But here's something that we can agree a lot on is Chicago. So I like what Chicago did. I think Chicago is going to be better. I just don't know that it's going to be expressed in their record. So I like the trade off of one, getting DJ Moore. I like taking Darnell Wright. I didn't care about the Nate Davis signing at guard, but he's a competent starter when they needed competent starters. Their defensive line is atrocious. And their linebacking core got a lot better. They signed Tremaine Edmonds and the kid from Philly, who I'll look him up on PFF right now just real quick. But like, I liked that signing quite a bit. I liked it more than the other Edwards, not TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards. And then they signed Tremaine Edmonds. You're doing your fans a lot of favors there, Chicago. Jack Sanborn.
Oh, I ordered the wrong jersey.
Right. Oh shit, that's gonna be terrible. But like, they had Jack Sanborn, who was, I believe, an undrafted free agent out of Wisconsin last year. Played well for them as a rookie. He was kind of their Malcolm Rodriguez, and you put those three guys together. I think that that's a really good linebacking core. So I think that the place that you can beat them is on the defensive line, especially if you have a good O-line. And they're going to hope to make up for it with their linebacking play, which I think is a recipe for losing in the NFL, but they clearly don't. So we will see. I think they got a pretty good secondary. So their offensive line got better. Their linebacking core got better. They added DJ Moore, which I think is going to be a big help to them.
They lost Montgomery. So I think that's actually going to be – he was an outlet for Fields. So I'll be kind of curious to see how they replace him.
My guess with that is that Roschon Johnson, who was Bijan Robinson's backup at Texas last season, is very quickly going to win the number one running back job there and be pretty impressive. So I wouldn't be surprised if his workload represented that of a lead back in a running back by committee backfield. So all in all, I think they got better in good spots. I just don't think it's better enough. Unless Fields takes a huge step forward, I don't know that this team is going to see their record improve in the way that they hoped it would.
How many wins did they have last season?
I will look that up. It'll take me just a moment.
I was thinking it was 3, but I think I'm also thinking that's too low.
It is 3.
It was 3. Look at that. I should just go with my gut.
3-14.
So 5-12. I mean, it's not a 6-win jump like we did when we went from 13-1 to 9-8 last year. But I mean, they almost doubled their wins with what we've kind of got here.
So my recipe for like quote unquote good progress made in a rebuilding team, Hatter's house. Goff is elite. Interesting. Not an opinion that we share. So 2 wins on top of what they did last year would be really close to that mark, but not quite that. So I would say it's like, yeah, we got better, not quite as much as we wanted to. Thank God. So I think all in all, a disappointing season for Chicago, but one that offers maybe some hope for the following season.
Yeah.
David Montgomery's in the chat. That's great. We're excited that you're in Detroit. Very, very clearly not David Montgomery.
It could be. You don't know.
We could be. That would be so cool.
That would be pretty
so
awesome.
cool if David Montgomery's like after practice in an ice bath, just like, let's see if there's any Detroit Lions podcasts out there talking about me. Oh, this guy's live right now. That'd be sweet. So I hope it really is him. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But we've got the Bears starting out of the gates with 3 losses. Green Bay, Tampa Bay.
Home against Green Bay.
Kansas City.
I mean, I think for sure the Tampa Bay and Kansas City games are like no-brainers, right?
They're both on the road. I mean, anybody on the road.
This one here is kind of a question mark. And the reason why I think it's a question mark is not because I think they're better than Green Bay. I just think week 1 with a brand new quarterback, I don't know if – I think Chicago's more ready to start the season with the team they've got. The quarterback's in there for his third year. Yes, they have to figure out how they replace David Montgomery. How's it going, brother? But they did improve. So the Packers, on the other hand, have a brand new quarterback. They don't really know what they've got. I think there's going to be a lot of feeling out. So that's why I think it's close. We did come to a consensus, Drew and I did before the show, that this is going to be a loss. I wouldn't be surprised if to win, though, just because I think it's first game. There's a lot of new, you gotta gel and all that kind of stuff. So this might be the thing that gets them to 6-12. This might be the one that flips, right?
See, I think Green Bay is much better top to bottom than the Bears are. But where Chicago probably has the advantage is at the quarterback position, and that is TBD. So, I mean, I would put money on Fields over Love to have the better season, the more impactful season. But I don't know that I would underestimate Jordan Love either.
Yeah.
So, but we have 3 straight losses. Then we go back-to-back wins, which is good.
And this one was kind of the shocking one, right? On the road against Washington.
So I heard a fun little theory about the Bears on Monday, and they have about $10 million more in cap space than the next closest team in the NFL. And you could make a trade before week 1 and get a piece, some kind of piece. So here's my thought for Chicago. Trade for Chase Young. Trade for Chase Young. You're going to have to pay him. You give up a 2 and a 3, something like that, and take all of his contracts. I know it's a rookie one right now, but
do you just go sue? You got money. It doesn't cost you anything. And Sue's going to want. What's that? Sue's
34 years old. I mean, sure, I guess
he's still a beast.
Yeah, but if you're Ndamukong Suh, do you want to play for the Chicago Bears, or are you hoping that a team like the Eagles picks you up in week 16 to make a playoff?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
We are actual Detroit fans. It may not sound like it all the time, but we are Detroit fans. David, Mr. Montgomery. So I wouldn't
Welcome to the D, by the way.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears swung a trade for a piece with their remaining cap space to give them a roster that's different than what we're looking at right now. But Sam Howell's going to be the quarterback, presumably, of the Washington Commanders. And I wish the kid all the best in the world. You were a 5th-round pick for a reason. So I don't know. Maybe you're great. Maybe, and this is the Brock Purdy of 2023. But if David Montgomery averages 5.5 yards per carry behind this O-line, you would never throw the ball, which would be perfect.
Yeah. That's true.
So are we really trying to prove that he's not David Montgomery, you guys? I mean, I love that he's in chat, but he's not David Montgomery. Come on. Don't be fooled. So then we've got them going 4 losses in a row to Minnesota, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Saints. Beating Carolina at home to give themselves a reminder that you can win in the NFL. And then another 4-loss streak to Detroit, Minnesota, Detroit again, and then Cleveland. So
Cleveland was the other one that you and I had a discussion on.
I think Cleveland is a decent team.
I think they're decent. I think they're average. I think they're very beatable. And until Deshaun Watson actually shows that he can return to form.
Sure.
I mean, granted, this is week 15, right? So by week 7, 8, 9, 10, we're going to know, has he returned to form? But if he plays like he did last year, I think this is probably a victory for Chicago. But if he does even come back to close to form, I think Chicago doesn't pull this one out.
So my opinion is that the Browns were 7-10 last year in the AFC North with him playing terribly. Also with them having him for the last whatever it was.
Yeah, but he only won one of the games that he was in. Like, 6 of those wins were not him.
Right. So I mean, like, and that's my point. Like, if he gets better at all, this team could be a 10-win team, and I don't know that it's that.
But if he doesn't, they could be a 4-win team.
Sure. But
right. So that's where I'm like,
he's fully reinstated. He gets to go through the whole offseason program. He's with the team for his first full year.
By the time this game comes around, we'll know a lot more about what he is and what he isn't. Right.
That is true. That is
going in. Until I see it, I don't believe it. So I need to see it, and maybe I will by then.
Yeah, well, it's possible. And then we have them beating the Cardinals, who I've got as the worst team in the NFL next year, and Atlanta, and then finishing up with a loss to the Packers for an overall record of 5-12.
So, Mr. Montgomery, how do you think your former team will end up? Are we on the ball with a 5-12? Where are we at in your estimation? While you're thinking about that or typing, we will move on to Green Bay, though, because he's probably in an ice bath or a jacuzzi, possibly,
who knows?
The other. So you don't
doing
know.
Film study. We can't know. And of course, now we come to the hated Packers, right? Everyone hates the Packers. If you're a Lions fan, we've hated them for years because they've been good. They've been good for a really long time.
Yep.
And finally, they're maybe not good, right? Because that piece of shit Aaron Rodgers is finally out of the division. And he tweaked his calf at OTAs today, so I'm loving it. I'm giddy about the tweaked calf. Anything that goes wrong, basically.
I'm sure he can ingest some sort of natural mushroom or something and make it all go away.
He'll do a ghee purge in his igloo somehow on the equator, and
maybe a darkness retreat will help.
Right. Mark has summarized my feelings quite summarily there. But anyways, so the Green Bay Packers, they lost Aaron Rodgers. That was hyped for a long time by NFL media. That's not a surprise. We don't have to do that. But I kind of like this roster. Like so I heard it described as the whole roster is in development, right? You have a lot of like really young guys. Dr. Detroit, I have a Star Wars podcast already.
He wants a YouTube. He doesn't want to listen to
me. YouTube? I'll answer now. We gotta fill this hour. The podcast. Oh, you've already checked out the podcast? That's so cool. Thank you. My buddy and I that do the podcasts, we're talking about putting it on YouTube. And like, I don't understand what this is. I haven't looked into it too much, but like Spotify has a thing called a visual podcast. Like, is that not just a YouTube channel? I don't know. Oh, thanks, Mike. So Dr. Detroit, do me a favor. Put some ideas and some stuff you'd like to talk about in Star Wars in the chat. 51 star. Oh, nice, man. Excellent. Put some of your favorite stuff. Like, what's your thing about Star Wars? Put it in the chat and I'll read it while we're talking about the Packers here. That's cool, by the way.
Because that's more interesting than the Packers.
Star Wars is more interesting than almost everything else. I mean,
as a Lions fan, other than the fact that we enjoy hating the Packers, right?
Yeah, I love Star Wars, so I think it's great. I just think this roster is better. I think that it's kind of like if you were cooking a meal, it's kind of like in the simmering stage right now, right? Like it's just about ready. You just need to like let it cook for a minute or two. Oh, Manuel Mosley. It is clearly not David Montgomery with a new name and pictures. So this is awesome. This is really
David told me about the punch.
Emmanuel Mosley, we are so thrilled that you are here.
Thrilled. Love it.
Kathleen Kennedly's been good for Star Wars.
So, Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Mosley, you should subscribe to the podcast. And at the end, we'll give you our email address. And maybe we'll have you on.
Yeah.
Right?
Shoot
us an email. We'll figure out a way. We'll have you on. And we can talk Lions. We can talk OTAs. We can talk about the draft. You name it. We will pepper you with questions.
I did contact the Lions public relations department to see what it would take to interview Holmes or Campbell. And I have not heard back.
Holmes? Or was it Dr. Detroit that was going to be doing
Dr. Detroit. You were supposed to ask him a question or something. Did you ever get a chance to do that? Why did they screw up Boba Fett? What do you mean?
While he's thinking or listening and getting ready to type, we'll keep going with Green Bay.
Yeah.
So at home or in Chicago, they're going to win. I think that's a toss-up game again for the same reasons I said before. I won't rehash. In Atlanta, their roster's just better, right? I think that's going to be a win. A loss to New Orleans at home, but I think that's kind of one of those 50-50 games too, right?
So the thing about New Orleans is they're just so hard to gauge.
Yeah. And I think, if I remember right, we disagreed on 4. I had us winning against Green Bay, and Drew had us losing against Green Bay in Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, like, we don't know a ton about the makeup of the Green Bay Packers, this version of them yet, right? And so, like, I get a lot of, like, Detroit Lions last year vibes from the Green Bay Packers. So could they surprise? I know it's a lot of people who are going to go out and really play hard, and like, I don't think that they're going to quit, and there's, pride on the line and all that kind of stuff. And I think that they're generally probably a better squad than we as Detroit fans want to give them credit for having.
I don't want to give them credit for having anything.
I understand.
So I think this is going to be kind of a toss-up game. I think we're going to win it. You've got them winning this one. We threw in your one here, which is fine. And then they travel to Las Vegas and lose. It's on the road. It's against a pretty decent team, kind of mediocre-ish, but it's another coin flip. I think one of the things that we've got with Green Bay is they're a mid-tier team, right? They are an average team. They're a coin flip team. So this could be a win. This could be a win. This could be a loss. There's going to be a lot of these coin flips, I think, when we talk about Green Bay. The one thing that they aren't going to lose is they're not going to lose in Week 6.
No one ever loses in Week 6.
No.
A6, if the Lions happen to go 8-0 in the division, that's going to be a real accomplishment.
Because we've only got 6 games.
They only play 6 games.
Unless we're also going to play the Packers in the first round of the playoffs and the Vikings in the second round of the playoffs. That's the only way we go 8-0.
That would be extremely interesting. So yeah, they come out of the bye, they go to Denver.
Yeah.
I just don't have a real high opinion of Denver. Sean Payton, fine. Can he resurrect Russell Wilson? Maybe. Russell Wilson looked atrocious last year. So bad that the rest of the roster can't make up the difference. So if that doesn't get fixed, this is a win, and that's what I'm banking on. Like, prove to me that you're something different, and I'll put money on the other outcome. But beating ourselves, that doesn't count in the win column. Dude,
and then at home against Minnesota, I think Minnesota's going to win. We've actually got them sweeping the Rams at home.
There will be no slack.
I think it's going to be a coin toss, and it really comes down to the health of the key people for the Rams, because they're so depleted that if their key people are not healthy and their key people are not playing at high levels, they may be one of the bottom 5 teams in the league again. Or they could be a playoff team. It really comes down to, do they stay healthy, and can those key people carry the rest of the team?
So there are other podcasts out there that do like a big board for like bets on the NFL and that kind of stuff. We should do that, and this should be our first one, because I think the Rams are just trash. Like, I like Matt Stafford fine. Yeah. I like Cooper Kupp fine. I like Aaron Donald, but you don't lose Bobby Wagner, Jalen Ramsey, have that offensive line, and And like, who else are you throwing to? I mean, like, they had everyone healthy and they played Buffalo, albeit it is Buffalo, and Buffalo buzzsawed them in the first game last year, right?
It's true.
So, like, to me, I would not be surprised if the Rams are picking in the top 10 with their own pick for the first time in a while. But, like, I think this team, even if Matthew Stafford would have to play really good football for this team to be an 8-9, 9-8 team.
Yeah. They've improved their offensive line. They need a bunch of things to go right? They need to have health on their offensive line. So not only did they improve it, but they needed to be healthy. They didn't have, I think the first 11 games, 12 games, they never started all 5 starters, and every single one of those games was a different offensive line lineup.
Yeah.
You can't have that. So they need to show the improvement. They need to be healthy there. Cam Akers is their running back, or is their lead running back. He needs to get back to form. Van Jefferson needs to show up and be the guy that they drafted. Like, they need a lot of things to go right. If that happens, they can be a really tough team. If it doesn't happen, they're going to be very mid to bad.
I don't know.
Why we have them losing here, right? We've got them beating the Rams.
I don't think their defense could stop an 8th grader if he could run away from Aaron Donald. I mean, like that. I mean, at some point when we might look at the Rams just like off camera or whatever, it's rough on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, not like it's a huge player or anything, but like they also lost Leonard Floyd.
In like 43 people that were draft picks or undrafted free agents.
Yeah.
Just to fill out a roster. That's great.
And they had 14 picks.
Yeah.
In this
draft. They had 11. They traded back in to get 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I love Guy Fieri.
So after they come back with a win against the Rams, they go on this losing
streak. Yeah.
All right. 5 straight losses. They lose on the road in Pittsburgh. They lose at home against the Chargers. We beat them in Detroit.
Kansas City.
Yep. Kansas City's going to, until they're going to have to lose to somebody, but it's not going to be Green Bay. And then I think the Giants on the road in New York, I just think this is the last of like a really rough stretch for them. It's microwave popcorn and Twizzlers. Nice. It was good chatting with you, Emmanuel.
The thing that people don't know about Emmanuel Mosley is that he was known for trolling in San Francisco before.
Punch the like button, subscribe.
Before they did not renew his contract. Yeah. So,
but like, I just don't see them winning any of those games. But they have to start winning sometime, right? Which is why we kind of Tampa Bay at home seems like the time where they turn that shit around.
I could see them beating the Giants. I don't know that the Giants are that tough. I mean, they feel like a lot like Minnesota to me, but like
they were a playoff team last year, and I think they improved.
They re-signed Daniel Jones. They franchised Saquon Barkley. They paid Dexter Lawrence an absolute ton of money, and didn't they draft a wide receiver in the first round? It wasn't Zay Flowers. It wasn't Addison. It wasn't Quentin Johnston. I don't remember who their first round pick was, but like, it was Deontay Banks, the corner.
Schmitz,
so it's like
Jalen Hyatt in the third.
Jalen Hyatt. So like Jalen Hyatt to me is like a lot of their other wide receivers, like smaller stature, speed guy. They have a lot of that type of player. Like I just don't know that it's, and all it's going to take is for Daniel Jones to like regress to the mean as far as like his turnovers that he's had. Like last year was his best year he's ever had with turnovers. Like he stopped fumbling basically. And that's great. And if he continues that, they probably beat the Packers. And if he doesn't, they probably lose, so like, but we have them beating the Bucks and Carolina in Carolina, traveling to Minnesota and getting a loss, and then beating Chicago at home to finish out the season 8-9. So we would have it Lions, Vikings, Packers, Bears way down here. So that's kind of how we see the North playing out. It'll probably be wildly different, now that I've thought it, right? So,
yeah. So where chat or even Drew, like which of these games, like now that we look at it, like do you think Minnesota's better than a 9-8 team?
I think that's perfectly who they are. I mean,
really?
Like,
so I figured they'd be 10-7. Like I think they're not. I mean, there's no perfectly average because there's an odd number of games, right? So, but I think they're just better than average. To be like 10-7 versus 9-8 or even 8-9. I just don't know. I mean, is it New Orleans that flips? Is it Vegas? I can see either of those flipping and being a 10-7 team. And I think Green Bay could be anywhere from about a 5-win team up to a 9 or 10-win team. It all depends on Jordan Love and all these coin toss. Like, that could be a coin toss win. That could be a coin toss win. And all of a sudden they're now 10-7, right? Just those two alone. This is a coin toss. That could be a win. They could be 11, right? But at the same time, I think that Detroit could beat them. I think that Tampa Bay could potentially beat them. I think Chicago has a opportunity to surprise them at in the first game here. They could be a 5-win team. I think they're anywhere in that range from 5 to 11 wins. It'll be really interesting to see what they do come time to put the ball on the field. So Dr. Detroit says he sees Minnesota division winner at 11 wins. He's got Detroit at 9 wins. Green Bay and Chicago both at 8 wins.
Okay. Where is Minnesota better than the Detroit Lions? I'll grant you Cousins over Goff, but I don't know that it's that different. Like, where does Minnesota
Jefferson over
have
Amon-Ra?
Sure. Justin Jefferson over name wide receiver here.
Right.
So, like, they have the best wide receiver in football. I think that's an easy thing to do. But, like, I mean,
it's the combination of the best wide receiver in football plus a better quarterback enough to offset the fact that I think we're going to have a better running game and offensive line. And the defense, I think our defense is going to be better than theirs. So, like, that's the real question, right?
They do have a relatively easy road schedule. They do have to play Philly, Cincinnati on the road. But otherwise, I could see it being mid-teams and down.
So Carolina's an easy road win. Chicago's relatively easy.
They do have
Green
Brian
Bay,
Flores as their new D coordinator.
I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their road games are, I don't want to say easy, but like certainly winnable. Vegas could be a win.
You definitely want to be able to go on the road and have a decent chance, right? Like,
yeah.
You're supposed to play well at home. That's supposed to be.
They got a much tougher home. Like, they're playing the Chargers at home. They're playing Kansas City at home. They're playing San Francisco at home. The New Orleans. I mean, that's a kind of a coin flip. But like those three, man, like half of your home games are almost certain losses. That's rough.
Well, to me, if you like, the recipe for a good team is win your home games, win half your road games, right? You'd be 10, 11, 12 win team, something like that. So, like, yeah, okay, so I can see that. I see I think that's a pretty good argument for me. That makes me reconsider it. However, what I would say is I think Detroit has improved more in this offseason than the Minnesota Vikings have. So I think that the Vikings are in line for a regression, and I think that the Lions are going to continue to progress, especially when it comes to the win. So, like, that's why I have them flip from what Dr. Detroit has predicted. So, I mean, that's why we make the predictions, right? So that we see if we're correct when it's this time next year. And that's the only way we're going to know, right? So we'll just have to watch and see how it plays out.
And I don't necessarily see Minnesota in the regression stage. I see that's where Green Bay is.
Where'd
They've
they get better?
regressed. What's that?
Where'd they get better?
I think they're in the treading water stage.
Right.
Right. I think you get that, like, you're on your way up, you're on your way down, and you're treading water because you're drafting in the middle of the draft. You're good enough to draft there, but you're not bad enough to get the really good people. And you're just kind of treading water. And I think that's where they're at. In a year or two, I think they're going to be starting in the regression phase. I just don't think it's this year. I think they're treading water, which, again, I think they're a 10, maybe 11 win team, probably 10 is my guess. And I think that we're either 11 or 12. So I think we should be better than them overall.
Yeah, to me, if you're not, I think, clearly getting better in an area in the NFL, you're in line for like losses. And like so like that coupled with the fact that I don't feel like they were a 13-win team last year, right? Like 13 wins is an elite amount of wins in a season.
Yeah.
You know, and so like I think what ended up happening last year is they hit a lot of outliers. I'd have to go back and look to see what those were. You know, penalties, turnover margin, field position, you know, that kind of stuff that like you can bury down to the roots and figure out for almost any level of football. It's going to help you win football games. But like, I think that they're going to enter a very interesting time, right? So like I said before we came on live, that I think Kirk Cousins is the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers at this time next year. He is the ultimate Kyle Shanahan, don't fuck up quarterback. And I think that the Vikings are finally going to be in a position to get out of this deal. And so then if you're going to turn over your quarterback position, you're probably in line for a regression, but you have to pay Justin Jefferson. And like, I don't know that I'm going to be right about this, but I'm going to take I don't know that it's a hot take or anything like that, but like, I think Justin Jefferson is going to be the first $30 million a year non-quarterback. I think he's going to sign an absolutely unbelievable contract. I know, right? It's crazy. But like, they're going to have to pay him, and then they're going to have to go and find a quarterback. And like, if they're 9-8, you're not going to be in a position to get a quarterback. You're going to have to like trade up from like 16, 17, 18 to be in a position to go get someone. I don't know that that's a recipe for success. So
Cousins, this is his last year under contract. That's not a void year.
Right. So it's his last year under contract.
4 void years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going to be out from underneath his contract in one manner or another at the end of this season. Like, yeah. I don't think they can re-sign him with $28.5 million of dead cap money plus whatever his next contract's going to be. It'll be pretty rough.
It's insane.
It's going to be rough either way.
So like there's ways to like, you know, the cap is like an accounting principle set, right? It's a bunch of rules that you can manipulate, right? What matters is like how much money the organization is actually having flow out to the players, you know, and their cash flow sucks.
Yeah.
So like they're going to go into a period where they're not going to have as much cap flexibility, have to turn over their quarterback position, have to play their elite wide receiver. So like I wonder, and I can't believe they would do this, but like if you're in that position, would you be better off trading Justin Jefferson for something like 2 1s and getting off of his contract and then like just being like, we're going to make some God offer to go get Caleb Williams? Isn't that in the better long-term interest of the Minnesota Vikings?
I don't know if you do that or not. I think you want Caleb Williams to have a guy like him on the squad.
I agree, but like that's the problem is that like you either have Justin Jefferson with no Caleb Williams or Caleb Williams with no Justin Jefferson. I mean, you can't have it both ways. I'd be shocked if they could have it both ways. But like they seem like they would be primed for like a trade up to get a quarterback in this year's draft because you're going to have the cap flexibility to accommodate the next 4 years of Justin Jefferson. Because you
know what their cap space is next year?
I bet
as of right now, $41.8 million.
See, that's
41.9.
It's all right. How many players under contract?
55.
They have 55 players under contract and have $40 million in cap space next year.
Yep.
That's hard to believe.
Cousins cap number is 28. Brian O'Neill's at 19. 6.
Brian O'Neill. Oh, it's the right tackle.
Delvin Cook. Here, I'll just.
No, I got it. I'm looking at it. Oh, you're doing
now. Everybody can look at it. So
okay, fine.
So
they can if they go to overthecap.com. Well, all those dudes with zero guaranteed money.
Yeah.
Those are not, we have to be on the roster players.
Right.
I mean, this team could be looking at extensive roster overhaul, right?
Yep.
And like,
and a lot of these guys look at dead cap of into single thousands of dollars.
Yeah, those are just back of the roster guys.
Yeah.
Favorite Star Wars director? Can I pick a TV show? Let's go with Kirshner. I think he did Empire. So I'll say Kirshner.
Who was the guy that I think he directed who directed Mandalorian?
Well, they rotate through, but like Bryce Dallas Howard has done a bunch of episodes.
That's not the guy I'm thinking of. He was in The Replacements. You know, the big guy.
John Favreau.
Yes, Favreau. And I guess he's more producer, isn't he?
Yeah, he's there's two guys that basically run Star Wars right now, and that's John Favreau and Dave Filoni. And they are the creative direction of Star Wars. It used to be George Lucas. He sold it. Dave Filoni did the Clone Wars television show for 7 years. And now he's transitioned into live action shows.
Yeah.
And then they brought John Favreau over from Marvel, where he was doing some stuff, I think, with like the Spider-Man films, basically. And those guys teamed up, rewrote the first season of Kenobi, came out with The Mandalorian. I don't know. It's been great. I love it. I think I am so happy where Star Wars is right now. We have more Star Wars content than ever, and I like what it's doing. I'm not in love with all of it, but like on the whole, I'm extremely happy that I'm at this point in time. So
yeah. Well, I think it's about time to call it a night.
Yeah. So next week, we're hoping to do an update to our positional value episode from last season. So we're going to be going over why it's important. You're on board with Kirshner. That's good. Why it's important, why it should be considered when it comes to things like watching game tape and like athleticism scores and combine production, and like why it's a piece of the whole. Why it's not the entire thing, but why it needs to be considered. And then what kind of value you should be looking to gain from it if that's a strategy that your team wants to employ to construct its roster. Yeah. So next week, it might be something you've heard before. Doesn't mean you couldn't hear it again. So please tune in.
Yeah, we'll have some good. So one of the things that we didn't do in the past was we didn't talk about like when it matters and when it may not matter, right?
Right.
We've always kind of talked about, it always matters. Well, I mean, it does, but it also doesn't, right? There's some times where you can overlook positional value for certain things.
Mark doesn't like the Star Wars chat.
We'll see you next week, Mark. So yeah, I think it'll be good. We'll kind of talk about the difference between last year and this year on the franchise tags and stuff like that. And what does the market look like? Where has it changed? So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. It's not going to be just a rerun by any means. I think we're going to have some pretty interesting content for you all.
Okay.
So.
Well, I'll leave Dr. Detroit with this. My favorite Star Wars character is Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, what about you, Mike? Do you have a favorite Star Wars character?
I mean, I like Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's pretty legit. I like. I'm not even gonna say his name because you don't like him.
Oh, who's
your least favorite?
Yeah, I can't stand Han Solo.
I love Han Solo. Like,
sure,
yeah,
he's a lot of people's favorite. So like it's not
I'm not an anomaly, right?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, we will catch you guys next Tuesday, 7 p.m. As always, pound that like button. Comment, subscribe. It helps us with the. It helps us with the algorithms with YouTube and Google and all that stuff. So, if you have any questions, email us at casualgmpodcast@gmail.com. Add us at casualgm1 on Twitter. Other than that, we'll catch you guys later. Have a good night, Drew.
See you, Mike.
All right, see you guys.